Okay, last episode we moved all the code, all the JavaScript, CSS related to the checkmark to a web component, so we can use it as a standalone component. Now, one thing I want to do is have an uncheck animation, because now the checkmark just pops out of existence, and so I would like to make a little animation for that. So we'll add a new animation. I forgot to turn off my copilot, so let's do that now. So let's call it undo checkmark. And we'll just go from 2, so that's the other way of writing it. So you can write 0%, 100%, or you can also just write from and to if you're not really interested in the percentages. So one thing we could do is give it a stroke dash offset of 0. That's the from state, because that's where we ended. And we move it to this one. So that's our new animation. Maybe also let's animate the opacity as well. Opacity 0. Let's see what that gives us. So now when we go to our checkmark SVG, I'll make a new CSS selector. I'll call it not checked. I could actually write it here, but I find it cleaner to just have a separate block, CSS block, styling block for the animation. So our stroke will be, we can just copy most of this. Our stroke will be, stroke color will also be our checkmark color, and our animation will be undo checkmark. And we have a delay here that we don't really need. So now we have a animation that kind of removes the checkmark. I think I would like it if it's sort of maybe scaled out a little bit as well. So let's experiment with that. Let's start at scale 1, and then we just end at scale 0. So it kind of disappears a little bit. Maybe not 0, maybe just half the size. I'm gonna see what it looks like when we remove the opacity. And then maybe we'll just scale back to 0. I'm just trying to find something I like here. I think I like this. One thing I will do though is make the animation a bit faster for the unchecking. Yeah, I think this is nice. Now, one problem, when we refresh the page, this animation is already playing. So a way we could fix that is to add a let's add a dirty class, which is now removes the effect because our checkmark does not have the dirty class. But now we can go to our checkmark and on the first click, we could say that checkbox wrapper dot class lists dot add dirty. So we never remove it. Once you click, it's dirty. And hopefully that will make sure that it does not get triggered the first time, but it does get triggered subsequent times. So now that's working. So that's lovely. We have a nice animation going out. Now, one thing I would also like is if we had a little bit more control over our checkmark. So I want to create a way to supply the size and the color from outside of this component. And the way we can do that is by, well, let's create a color variable. And in the constructor, we will say this.get attribute. So we check if there is an attribute called color. We take the value and we map it to color. And we'll do the same for size. Okay. Now, when a color or size attribute is applied, we want to set our custom property. We have two custom properties for that. We have the checkmark size and the checkmark color. And it's those that we want to set. So how do we do that? We take a reference to our checkmark. We can do that here. We'll create a function or a getter actually called getWrapper. And what we will do is we will say if not this.wrapper, so it's sort of a getter and a setter. So if you come from a language like C# or I don't know, Java or something, this concept of getters and setters might be familiar. So you create a private property, and then you create a sort of function to get or set the value, and you can do additional things here. So if we do not have a wrapper yet, we'll say that our wrapper is our shadow root, and we select our wrapper element. And then we'll just return it. What we now can do is, you can see that we use it here. So let's just remove that. And then replace all these references to checkbox wrapper. I think that's all of them, to our this.wrapper. So the first time we ask for it, we will get it from the DOM. And then we just we can just use the reference. So there we go. And let's do the same for the color. But we'll create a set color too in this case. So set color. So we do this dot color is our, well, we expect a value. So even though this is a function, this will get triggered when we assign a value to this color thing. So color here, this property has now a getter and a setter here. But the other thing we do is we take our wrapper and we add as an inline style, we will set our custom property checkmark color, and we use the value, or actually we can do this as well. Actually, let's just use value here. So what this does is when the color is set, we store it and we change the custom CSS property to that value. When we want to get it, we just return our stored variable. I'll just copy this for the size as well. Oh, I can see I made a mistake here. And here as well. That seems to be all of them. Okay, so here we call that size. This is of course also size. So we can test this now. Let's see if this works. We go to our app and we had this function create checkbox. Now we can supply a size and a color. I'll just default them so it's not necessary to use them. And now we can add those attributes. So we say size is our size and color is our color. There you go. Let's see if that now gets set in here. So you can see that now size and color are attributes that are passed to our component. Now it doesn't do anything yet because we are using the default values, but we could quickly test if it works to see if the checkbox size is different when we give another value, and it is not. So it's debugging time. We have to figure out what we did wrong here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a debugger statement here. And then we'll see. Actually, before we do that, I can just check if the inline style is being set or not. So we can see that it is not being set, but we do not get an error, so we have to figure out what happened. So what I would expect is that our div class checkmark now had a style. Basically, this is what I expected to happen. This is sort of what I expected, and then the same for the size. So that's what we tried to achieve. Didn't work out, so we will have to figure out what the problem is. Let's put a debugger statement in our set color and see what happens. So when we hover over our wrapper, then we can see that it exists, so that's good. but it still didn't edit. And I'm not exactly sure why this happens. So I'll pause the video and I'll figure it out, and then we'll go through the solution together in just a moment. I had some problems setting up the reactivity of my attributes. So what I wanted is when I change one of those, for example, I'll take my color here and I make it red, then I want this to instantly update. Same for the size. So that wasn't working. The reason why is actually because what you have to do is you have to define a property, a static property. So this one is not applicable to an instance of our checkmark. This is applicable to all checkmarks. So what we have to do is we have to say, okay, there's a color and a size attribute that you have to watch. And then we can make use of the attribute change callback function, which will be triggered anytime we change the size or color attribute on our component. And that's on itself triggers the getters and the setters, which helps us set the styling values. So now we have a very customizable, editable or extendable checkbox. So let's leave it here for this episode.